National security front and center as the U.S. targets ISIS in Syria and new terror threats at home. But while focusing on national security certainly is vital, have we dropped the ball on job security? A new survey showing more than 5 years after the recession ended, only 1 in 4 workers feel more secure about their jobs, and 1 in 4 Americans in their prime working years are not even working. Some here say government policies are to blame. Are they right? Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Rich Karlgaard, Sabrina Schaefer, Mike Ozanian, Rick Unger, and John Tamny. Rich, are government policies to blame here?
Well, you know, government can't create growth, but it can certainly create the conditions for growth, and it's not doing that. Now, what do I mean? It can streamline taxes, it can streamline regulation, it can adhere to a stable dollar policy, and if it did that, I think we would be enjoying 3 to 4% growth and not this paltry 2% growth that is really falling on the shoulders of the people that you mentioned, and it's going to leave them out to sea for an entire generation if we don't fix this. We can fix this.
Rick, 22% of the workers laid off over the past 5 years are still not working. That's awful.
It's a very depressing statistic. It really is. Nobody should feel good about that. But, you know, picking up a little bit on what Rich said, he's right when he points out that government cannot on its own stimulate growth. I sometimes think we give government too much credit and then too much blame in these situations. But there are some other things you have to look at, and maybe it points to some good news. We're finally starting to see the place where the benefits of shipping jobs overseas, the financial benefits, are weakening, and more companies are bringing those jobs back home. That's a good thing. This may point to the right direction, but we do have to be mindful that as we bring those jobs home and we improve that situation, we have to pay these workers a fair living. If we don't do that, we're not really going to stir the economy to where people can go back out and buy things.
But, Steve, there also have to be fair returns for the business community as well. To start a business is not an easy thing, and we haven't had that undergrowth of new businesses for a long time, have we?
And that goes right to the doorstep of the federal government. We saw the same thing in the 1930s and 1970s. Government regulations, government interventions, and taxes got in the way of recovery. We see the same thing now. The Federal Reserve regulations have made it very difficult for small and new businesses to get loans. We have a convoluted tax code, the highest corporate tax rates in the world, an unstable dollar, a health care system that is collapsing and posing real burdens on small businesses that want to grow. It's amazing we're doing as well as we're doing. You look around the world, David, you find the same thing. Huge internal barriers to economies, private economies getting ahead, and they wonder why they have youthful unemployment rates that are far higher than our own.
Mike, it's funny. Steve mentioned the 1930s. Of course, we had this PBS series on the Roosevelts recently, idealizing the Roosevelts and what they did. But, you know, Roosevelt and his policies of massive government intrusion didn't get us out of the Depression, did it?
No, David, FDR and President Obama both basically believed you had to attack success. And what do I mean by that? If you look at what drives economic recovery, it's business investment. That's where those higher wages that Rick and others point to that's missing, that's where it comes from. During the Reagan boom, business investment was 22% of GDP. During President Obama's recovery, it's only been 17%. Why should we be surprised? This president has raised the combined top tax rate for dividends and capital gains to 43.4% from 35%. He's punishing successful investment. Naturally, you're going to get less of it.
And, Sabrina, all boats were rising in the 1980s. The lowest 1/5 of the population had their incomes rising at the same level, just about, as the top 5th. Now it's very unequal.
Right, and look, I think that this point that we can create the conditions for success is so important. And one of the problems is that government, they do deserve a lot of blame because they've been floundering around micromanaging wages and pushing for a conversation about contraception rather than saying, you know what we need? We need more energy exploration. Why are we limiting federal permits? We need to bring our corporate tax rate in line with the rest of the world. We need to, if we're not going to repeal Obamacare, we at least have to get rid of this employer mandate, as Steve mentioned. if you're going to go from 49 to 50 employees, you're not going to do it anymore. We have to stop pushing for a higher minimum wage. We have to stop pushing for things like the Paycheck Fairness Act. These are all distractions that are going to drive the economy down rather than increase the job creation.
John, this is one reason why the average folks feel so bad about things. Even if you have a job, median income is down about $3,000 since the beginning of President Obama's administration.
Well, income, as Mike says, is a function of investment, and this administration has been very anti-investment. I agree with everyone here that there are some policy things that we could do that would improve the economy, but at this point, I think the economy suffers from too much Washington attention, too much of Washington trying to fix the economy, stimulus, quantitative easing. These things do not work. Economies are individuals, they're businesses. Recessions are a sign that they're curing those mistakes and fixing them. The problem with all this intervention is that it's robbed us of the chance to fix those mistakes, and it's robbed us of a substantial recovery. What I think is the best fix for the economy right now is gridlock, because if Washington gets out of the way, we will naturally start growing. That's all we know how to do.
So, Rich, you say the government only can create the conditions for growth, not growth itself. Is one of those conditions just doing less?
Well, I think it has to do more to do less because, just take the subject of regulation. This really hits the skilled blue-collar industries like manufacturing, transportation, shipping. These are industries much more prone to regulation, and yet, that's where we need growth because that's where the skilled blue-collar jobs are that are lacking in this economy. So I think we have to get bipartisan, aggressive deregulation. So, yeah, it's less government, but we have to come together to get there.
Rick, what do you think it's going to take to change the attitude of people out there? There's such a depressed attitude about the future right now.
Well, this is actually one place where I have put some blame on the president, and so I'll mention it again here. I think the real answer to your question, by the way, is you need to have a couple of quarters, maybe even a whole year of really good numbers, and then people are going to relax. But I will agree that this president has been less of a cheerleader than he should be. He does not make us feel like it's getting better, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
But he's always being applauded for his skills at oration, right?
He hasn't done it here. I have to. I'd be dishonest if I didn't say it.
Yeah, look, to Rick's point, when you spend your presidency attacking success, which is what President Obama has done, it sends a
Give
very
us some
bad
examples, though, because I know Rick disagrees with you on that.
He attacks the banks. He constantly points to the
That's
upper
true.
1%, about tax fairness. What he fails to understand or is indifferent to is the fact that the top 1% are the people that create the jobs for the people below them through investment.
Steve, the thing about somebody like a Reagan, or frankly somebody about an FDR, they did have this tendency to be able to pull the country together. They had very different policies, but they did pull the country together. That's one thing this president is not doing.
No, he's done the opposite of the speeches he gave before he became president when he said we're not a red nation, blue nation, but a United States of America. And since then, he's been on a partisan jihad against anyone he thinks is an opponent. And he thrives on that kind of a division and controversy. And you see it again. You see it on the energy side. You see it when during the campaign, the last campaign, when he said, you didn't make it, disparaging entrepreneurs, people who create new things for the marketplace. And so when you have that kind of environment, you have regulators always looking for new ways to put new spokes, put sand in the gas tank. It's a wonder the car still works.
And Rick, we were sold President Obama as a uniter. That's what he said. That's what his people said. But he's been a divider, has he not?
No, I don't believe it's his fault that he's been a divider. I think I would more Congress. I want to quickly say something that I think is interesting about what Mike said. There's a tendency to compare this president to Franklin Roosevelt because of the economic situation. But as I was listening to Mike, he was really describing Franklin Roosevelt's cousin, Teddy Roosevelt, who came into office, a Republican, I might add, and was looking out for the working man.
One final word to Sabrina. What about this uniting issue? I mean, we do have, that is one thing that was positive about FDR and Reagan. They did unite the country for different means, absolutely, but I don't sense that there's anybody out there able to do that now.
No, in fact, look, I mean, for all of the challenges that the United States has right now, we still have a wonderful country with a very positive story to tell about what's happening here in terms of business development and success. And unfortunately, this is a president, especially with certain groups, whether we're talking about women or we're talking about specific industries, he talks about societies inherently hostile, as discrimination lurking around every corner. Everything is bad, rather than giving people a sense of optimism and something to look forward to. I think it's a terrible character flaw in this president.
We do need a big shot of optimism right now, no doubt about it. Coming up next, the anti-Walmart crowd and big banks both bashing Walmart over its new low-fee checking accounts. But is that proof this is actually the best thing for all banking customers? We debate.